Hello YouTube, I'm Elwirfy, and this map looks a bit familiar to me, you know? Is it exactly the same map as last time? Well, yes it is, if you're wondering, it's exactly the same map. Why though? Well, those guys from before, they wanted a rematch, so we figured, hey, let's give them a rematch. So now everything's a bit more shaken up. That guy Max, who was the Russian player, he's actually gonna be on the enemy team now. Matt Clapp's still around, and then we have some new players that you'll see at the end of the score screen. No, I don't know their names because they were random people who just kind of joined to kind of fill it up. But I am gonna be the British player again, and we are gonna. Well, I mean, I always play as the British because they're my favorite group, you know. I mean, don't hate me for it. But yeah, I'm playing with the exact same army as well because I figured they worked pretty good last time, so why not do the same thing? And I had the same deployment strategy. I'm gonna have some men over here, and we're gonna have people over here. So let's go over the armies for my allies first, and then I'll hit play, let the enemies pop up on the screen, and then we'll continue to introduce their armies. So we have Denmark here. Oh, very interesting army because we don't normally see Denmark in games. Granted, you see him more often than Sweden, which I might consider doing Sweden. So of course we have the general staff here, which is very, very good. We also have Norwegian ski troops. Surprisingly, these are not Swedish. These are Denmark. Sorry, these are Denmark. Then we have dragoons over here. And lifeguards of foot, we have two units of lifeguard of foot. We have some line infantry. His are actually named line infantry. My line infantry are just called foot, which is a bit of a, you know, that's a unique difference. His men are actually called line infantry. So he has 4 of those, and he also, sorry, he has 5. 6, 7, 8. Okay, so he just brought like 8 line infantry. You know what? That's totally okay. Denmark is, sorry, one of the smaller countries, so it doesn't have as many unit options, which is okay. But hey, he did bring some militia and sharpshooters. Sharpshooters are pretty good. He also has lifeguards of horse. The nice Denmark yellow horse looking guys are pretty awesome. Then we have dragoons, another set of dragoons. And then we have the Prussian player with the general staff. Everyone pretty much uses general staff because we weren't really too concerned about morale and all that. So then we end up having the musketeers, foot guards, pretty much line infantry essentially, of assorted. He's got some an 8th life regiment, which are pretty cool. He also has these foot guards. Foot guards are pretty good for the Prussians. They got those like nice poofy hats. There's a couple guys up the middle here, and then his main force. Well, technically his main force is. Oh, let me try and pronounce this. Lützow's Freikorps. Yeah, Lützow's Freikorps and Hussars, which are very good units. Yeah, he has 2 units of the Hussars. Sorry if you can hear my dog. You probably can, and that kind of sucks. But anyway, so we have the... Oh. You okay, dog? Anyway, so we have the Prussian Fusiliers, we have musketeers, more musketeers, a lot of musketeers actually, which is quite surprising. So let's put this into play and let's see what the enemy has decided to bring to fight this long line of troops. You know, this is pretty well extended. Alright, so as we continue, you'll see that I'm going to be taking this unit, putting it over here, taking this unit, putting it over here. Or at least that's what I should have done anyway. Let's fast forward a little bit, not ×2 speed, but ×1, just so we can hurry up and get to it. So what you'll see is that the Prussian player over here has decided to clump all his units over here, which is totally fine, and clump his units in the rows so they can just kind of march over the hill, and everything will get nice and lined up. He's got his horses getting redeployed here because he's just trying to line up. I'm not sure if Denmark and Prussia were friends, but I didn't know either of them, but they seemed like they kind of knew how to work together. You know, they understood kind of the basic strategies of that. But hey, one cool thing about this map... Oh yeah, so I'm moving those guys over. Actually, I think I took both those guys and put them over here, which is fine. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Oh, okay, let me just pause. And I want to go over the armies over here before the battle really kicks off. So we have the French player. And the French player is currently using 1, 2, 3. He's using 3 horse units that are all over here, probably wanted, because normally I've noticed players in my position where I'm starting out as. I don't know why I started there a second time. They'll usually just like swarm this side and ignore this, but I actually had an army over here. Who would have thought? Anyway, so we have a dragoon unit, we have chasseurs, cruisiers, yeah, and Polish Guard lancers. I mean, these lancers are strong. Like, I like these guys. These are really cool. But that's all he really had over here, because he expected to fight me down this path. So he ends up having more crusaders. He actually has a lot of cav. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He has 7 cav units. So he also has the Empress dragoons, which are very nice looking ones. Then he's got chasseurs et cheval and Dutch Guard lancers, as well as more crusaders. And he also brought Swiss foot. He got 1, 2, 3, 4 Swiss foot. His infantry army is a bit smaller. He's got a Polish legion, and he's got chasseurs that are skirmishers. So that's what the French player had. Oh, and also Life Guard hussars for the Russians that were deployed over here, which was away from the rest of his entire army, because the Russian player also is bringing in the 17th, pretty much the Jaegers. He also has a special 17th Jaeger one. He also has musketeers, 1, 2, 3, 4 units of musketeers, as well as a Life Guard of foot and Semnovoski Life Guard, Pavlovsk Grenadiers, Moscow Musketeers, and pretty much a lot of musketeers, and infantry with another dragoon unit on the side, and some crusaders in hiding with the general staff. And then the British player actually, so what's interesting, so Max, the guy who was the Russian player before, he's in the middle now, okay? And then the British player is the same British player who we saw in the last battle. There we go. And he's just bringing these foot guards, you know, 4 units of foot guards. He's got a Black Watch, 2 King's German Legion foot, some Highland foot, 3 units of those. Actually, actually 4 units of Highland foot and regular foot, as well as his general staff. And you'll notice that in terms of like cav count, there is no cav for this player, which I thought was quite strange. So let's go ahead and kick off the battle. I think we've done introductions long enough. And they're all just gonna kind of march forward here, because I decided, well, if we're just gonna fight, we're actually gonna fight, we should probably line up. And you'll notice this little pathway, that's something I wanted to make sure I had control over, so I just directly pushed them up to pretty much like a third of the map, as well as taking my skirmishers and pushing them forward. You'll notice, though, that we have a very aggressive cavalry movement by the Prussians, just kind of lining up, because they kind of want to take over these buildings, which would be smart. You know, and the British player is just kind of moving his ranks forward. He's actually going to do the exact same setup, too, which is quite interesting, that he would go for the same plan twice. So all these, you can see specific army patterns, but when it's not your own troops, you can only see the direction. So they're kind of spreading out, just kind of darting all over the field. A couple of them ordered to enter that building, which is really good. You'll see that the Russians are also making their moves forward. Again, I can't view that just because of how the replay works. And the French player would be moving up his light infantry to try and combat mine. But what's interesting is these horses are actually going to continue their pursuit. They're not going to fall back. Which, I mean, if you have horses and you're fighting, you know, like foot guards, Highland foot, the Black Watch, like my elite troops were over here essentially, which was an accident actually, because when I play, I don't personally keep track of who's what. I just kind of am like, hey, you're an infantry unit, line up. So those guys are actually very strong. I didn't mean for them to be that strong. I thought I had some strong guys over here, but that's totally fine, because my army's just going to be in a big cluster right now, as we just line up to take this position.
This building has fallen to the enemy.
All right, so the Russian player does get in that building again, as we actually saw in the last game, which is again totally fine, because the Prussian player is making his moves to kind of set up not going into the building, which was actually probably a pretty good idea, Because as much as having buildings is nice, I feel like it's not the be-all, end-all. And the first engagement will actually be over here with me. Unless I happen to see fighting over here, in which case I'm happy to look at that too. But all of these guys are going to be lining up, and the battle's just going to kick off right in a good, glorious gun show. He will get the first volley, but I don't mind, because I outnumber him. That, and I have the rest of my army moving up to try and add more pressure. But these are, here's the thing, when I was fighting I realized, wait, these are unprotected skirmishers. So we had a skirmisher battle where like all of my skirmishers against all of his, and mine were winning because I had the rest of my army here to give morale boost. Just being around your army, you know, that helps the morale. So I actually end up being able to totally take this position because these cav are just walking over.
This
but then
building has fallen to the enemy.
you notice these Dutch lancers have shown up. So yeah, I'm just kind of hurtling my men at them because, you know, why not? And over here you'll notice that there's a little bit of building fire. The Russian players moving some units around to try and take out this building, but there's 3 units stacked in that, which is pretty good. And the British player on the far side who we're fighting isn't really been an issue. So I'm running all my men into position. I end up having to do a little bit of editing of my troops because I didn't want them being in front of my skirmishers. But since they're undefended, I decided to take this cav and just charge into them. Now he did do a counter cav charge, which I was aware of, but it was a bit too late because I'd already gotten engaged. So I just kind of let the cav just do their thing because it was going to hold up the rest of their army, which would be enough time for these guys to get this sort of flanking position, which is what I was looking for. And my cav are actually doing a good job because my lights are actually helping to cut down the enemy cav, and so then I order more men to move in, and we just pretty much start ripping through the French pretty quick. And as you can see, I mean, you know, if you're a French guy, it's like, well, dang, that's a lot of British soldiers. Because I started routing units, like almost immediately. And don't get me wrong, there were some good volleys. I actually ended up having some trouble. My cav ended up getting lost. But, I mean, that's to be expected. Cav are not perfect. But hey, at least they're running through the enemy, you know, kind of messing with them. Because I wasn't planning on getting that cav back when I charged him in. I knew it was a suicide mission. But then I'm able to get this line infantry. And my foot are very good against Polish Legion. Simply because, one, he tried to charge, which meant that these more units in the back would actually probably be able to open fire, which is not something you want to do. Let's see, check this out. Yeah, all these units are just going to lay waste to that one unit, which isn't good. That's not something you want. And so you'll notice he sends over some Swiss foot to try and combat me. He actually ends up bringing 2 Swiss foot, which I didn't really have too much of an issue with. Granted, I was really focused over here, just trying to make sure we wiped everyone out. But I did call over some of my men to march this way to try and reinforce, because I did notice that there were a lot of cav, and I didn't really want to, when my men formed square, because I knew these guys could all possibly need to form square, and while I do have an extra cav in the back, I don't know where they're going to hit. And when these guys form square, they're prone to being shot down, so I wanted to have men in the back just in case, to hold the line. So while that's happening, as I've just been routing the enemy completely, we end up having a bit of a stalemate here because the Russian players lined up. Granted, I know fighting buildings is tough, but it's possible. You know, it's very easy to, like, you could just order your men to run in. But Denmark's actually doing a pretty good job here. They're just kind of keeping them at bay, which is really what I needed here. We actually end up, sorry I missed that, but the Prussians actually will end up routing a cav unit with an infantry, which is pretty cool. And the British players kind of moving their Blackfoot around. And you can see there's the same kind of setup. And, you know, I tell my players, like, hey, I know what he's doing, don't worry about him. You know, because he doesn't, for some reason, he doesn't like to move his men. You know, because that first volley doesn't really matter too much if you're just going to overwhelm them. It does matter if you're going to be in an even battle. So anyway, this section's kicking off as I'm just fighting the French much more effectively than I was able to fight Austrians, because now I was like, ooh, a real battle where I get to fight. So I had a bit of an issue with these men not firing. Granted, these guys weren't getting shot at, but it was kind of becoming a one-on-one, you know, my Highland Blackfoot watch versus Swiss foot. My men were winning, but not by much, and that was concerning, especially when I see that cav charge coming in. Because this is the only thing I'm really microing. I mean, over on this side, granted, I had just formed up my men to line up to fight those guys off. But they do, my men form square. These black watch are a little late to form square, but it ends up being kind of okay, because this square is actually going to just be shooting them. And hey, these are black watch, alright? They are hard to kill. And over here, I didn't realize that there was going to be some more cav on this flank, but it's alright, because I ended up just shifting over to kind of concave and surround my opponent, because I really wanted to just take out the French as quickly as I could. And so I move up my men. There we go. And let's check out this nice long line of fire. Oh yeah, and I send cav in, by the way, to help charge, because I notice that his general is exposed. So I order them to charge. They are going to run through that line, which is okay with me, but I really just try and get them to fight them off. And all these elite units just going to plow through the remainder of these Swiss foot, which was perfect. Now you'll notice that all his cav are running away, because they may as well go help their ally, because I've pretty much destroyed France. They're crippled. But hey, this time we have that same scenario where the building is taken, and so I realized, okay, well, this time I have even more of my army, because I don't have to commit to backing up on that hill, which meant that things could go a bit smoother.
We have killed their general.
I love these lines how they fight, and we kill their general. Yeah, we kill their general right out there. And all of his men are just running and breaking, which I found to be absolutely extraordinary. I didn't realize my men were that good. I mean, we even had like that hill advantage, so I wasn't hurting my own men. And then I just kind of pushed forward, because I'm like, well, better go to the rear and sweep around. And so then I moved my men up, kind of in preparation for this Swiss foot that returned to battle to show up. I actually got down and observed just to make sure, but they were actually on the hill. Because I noticed when they fired, the enemy didn't take any damage. And that was kind of concerning, because I lost that volley. But it's alright, because on his angle... Oh, he actually had a good... I'm sorry, he actually had a pretty good view of me. Oh, right, no, I could see him, yeah. Because it's like, I'm pretty sure line of sight is a double-way streak. Alright, so in the middle, we have a massive cav charge as Denmark is holding the line. We have the Polish legions moving up. Finally, the Russian player is actually attacking. He's pushing up all his men to kind of form up, but these buildings are just slaughtering them. And so then the Denmark cav is going to be rushing forward. And he gets away with the charge. But the Russians are good in melee combat. That's what they're known for. So let's see how well they can hold off against the Danish charge. While the Moscow Musketeers, these very elite units, are going to be firing onto that building, but the general is right there to give moral support, as well as having these extra lines on the side. So while this cav charge is going on, you'll notice there's actually a battle between the Russians and the Denmark right in there. And we'll even see a square from Denmark as this cavalry slowly gets cut down, but France brings in its remaining forces for an attack, and I let them know, hey, there's a cav charge. Let's just see where these guys end up going. What unit were they going after? It's a bit laggy, but it's okay. I just won't get zoomed in. And there we go. They actually get in there, and it was very unfortunate, because there's just this huge wave of troops hitting the Danish lines, but he has fresh troops. So again, it's totally okay. It seemed like in this battle it went a bit smoother for us, this rematch, because we were able to kind of push our way through a bit easier. Also, this only had one unit of men in it, and I was like, well, better line up on this flank, because these men were running and everything was going pretty well. So you'll see here the Prussian army kind of doing a nice cav charge to give aid to their Danish brethren. And it's just a cluster of killing. What's cool is that like the lifeguards of horse are actually doing a pretty good job here, and we're able to rout some units. And so they're just combating the last of the French cavalry, which is absolutely wonderful for us. As you can see, Prussia's foot guards are losing that battle though, but overall, Prussia is going to be able to take this building. And it's just a big cluster of troops fighting. Russia bringing in more men to try and hold on to that building, because Russia is good in melee. You know, you should give them credit where it's due. But I mean, man, with these French, so the French charged into the Danish, but the Danish countercharged behind them, leaving like just a trail. Unfortunately, though, the Russians were able to get in the square, so the Denmark was able to hold off this, and the French actually had a Polish legion survive, so they were actually kind of firing on them over there. But I realized that there's the Russians in the building, and they're good at melee, so I just stack up, because I'm like, alright, that's what's going to happen.
We have taken the buildings up.
I don't actually know where they are. Oh well, maybe the graphics are kind of messed up on in the end. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. That's the reason why they're not there, is because we just routed them. This battle has a lot of factors in it, because this building's being taken over and fighting. Oh yeah, there's a bit of fighting over here. The Prussian player's fighting the British, and he's kind of getting support lines, but it's not too nothing too ridiculous. And I'm just kind of setting up, like, all right, time to go to the next building, while our opponents are rushing over here. The Russians themselves actually going into this building, trying to take this over from Denmark, but Denmark counters with his line infantry attacking the Polish Legion. And we're just kind of tearing through the land here. As you can see, my men are actually pushing forward to try and take out these Russians. Because, yeah, you know, we don't want the Russians to, you know, hang on to this territory. But they were still pretty strong, though. Yet, these guys were actually intended to go into the building, but I found this unit of foot, so I had to go in and make an attack. Now, something very unfortunate that happens here. So these foot are firing as usual, you know. They actually help to rout it, which is really nice. But I was totally unaware of this cav charge, and they just come crashing into my line, and it's just brutal. And I did not like that, so I panicked, and I was like, oh god, run. So I ordered these guys, hey, you gotta get over there. And unfortunately, they were not running yet, but eventually I do believe they will start running. Nah, they're not really running right now. So I do end up getting that, trying to get that third unit into the building, but it just seems to end up like being kind of glitchy and weird, which kind of sucks. I don't know why that cav's making the game lag. I don't know. So we actually take this building, which is pretty good. These poor Russian troops, you know, they end up having to break because they can't handle fighting a building in there. You know, I mean, you're in a building that's going to be much stronger for you. Then there's this constant fighting over here. And then Denmark is actually making an attack of their own. Now we actually end up getting ambushed here, kind of. This unit was being funky, because I wanted it to go in the building, but it wasn't going in the building. It's actually a pretty even battle for this house, and I wanted these guys to get in there. And Russia is just kind of moving all their cav away. It was just awful for my men. Fortunately, Denmark came to my aid and was able to help this out. Because while I did have a unit rout, these guys were getting into position to help continue the assault. What's nice is that finally the British player was starting to have to fight and have to actually participate in this battle. Now, Prussia should have really gotten out of their square because they're fighting Blackwatch, which kind of sucks. And you'll notice we actually win that building fight, which is great, so I immediately get everyone out because I don't really care too much about the building fights necessarily. And also I figured I need to help out in melee, you know, because I noticed that the Denmark was having some trouble, so I wanted to bring in my own men as aid to this cause. And Denmark was actually shooting from far away at this cavalry by the Russians. which is very good. And then you'll notice there's some awesome shooting. I mean, they could say hi to each other. I mean, look at how close this is. And then you'll notice there's some sort of a charge, I think. I think this was supposed to be a charge, but ended up stopping. Point blank, I mean, dang, I didn't even know the soldiers would be able to get that close without just like going nuts and going melee. Anyway, so they're just kind of letting themselves get shot. They're actually facing the wrong way. They're kind of facing at an angle, which is good for the Prussian player because he's just like, oh hey, we'll do what we can. And so yeah, all these British troops just kind of getting clogged up here by just a couple of units. And this unit's slowly getting killed off by a unit that's pretty much not taking damage because no one's firing at it, but these guys are getting super destroyed. So the Prussian player is forced to move up some musketeers to help aid in his other lines. And the British player's trying to just keep everything together. I mean, this just seems really funny to me, how like they're right in front of each other.
No, they must break.
Oh yeah, and a general died, but the Russian player is pretty much out of the game. This was a much quicker mop-up. But then we eventually see them try and get a charge off, and they do. Fortunately, this musketeer army was here. Granted, you have to fight the entire might of England in one fell swoop, but the English player actually does something quite sneaky. He runs this Blackwatch Highlanders down to try and make an attack, but don't worry, these men were definitely ready to fight. So coming out into the field, he realizes he's the only one left, and then he's in like panic mode, because I mean, you don't want to clump the men up. I mean, he had 3 units of Highland foot. I don't see any non-Highland foot here, and these are really strong units, but he just kind of let them do what they want. I wish I could see his plan of his thinking behind his deployment. And you know, Great Britain was just, you know, he's moving up his foot. In terms of like being in the middle, I realized, oh wait, I got to go around the back and help out. But fortunately, my allies were going to come over here and help deal with it, which is very good. So I'm moving my men up. I'm like, oh, okay, let's just line up our guys. I actually have some guys over here, I think, that we're trying to make a move. And so the last of the battle, right over here. So you can see all these British soldiers moving in these like big columns. You know, this is what Total War is like, supposed to feel like, you know. But then, oh, look at this, the Prussians actually were able to hold off. And so they're going to get this nice little side shot. Yeah, that's something you like to see. So the skirmishers are, of course, going to be pulling back, because you don't want to engage this directly, even if they are kind of clumped up in a ball and very easy targets. You know, because these guys got the cover of the trees, firing at units that are out in the open. I mean, there's units coming from behind, but with this kind of a setup, again, this nice concave, and really, honestly, this side unit being able to fire. I don't think these guys were in range, so that was a bit sad. Now, fortunately, these guys were here to kind of block up any retreat, so we didn't have much of a choice in movement. And these were no, sorry, that was Denmark. Denmark's men. My men and Denmark's men look very similar. As you can see, we had cavalry, and we were just setting up behind them. But he was ready. You know, he like flipped around his lights, and was just ready to start shooting. But we decided, you know, we don't have any light infantry. We should just like get in there. That first volley, that doesn't mean much to us. Granted, the Prussian player was being nice and soaking up a lot of damage, but Andy was fighting a 2-front war. So as you can see, there's a melee attack that had to happen. And these guys are still clumped up in a ball. I don't know, maybe it's because he was microing over here. He wanted to make sure everything would work out for himself. But I mean, this is going to be a tough nut to crack, you know. They got, you know, this is a strong setup, you know. So I was explaining to them, look, you know, I love how like you got like the Prussian light infantry being supported by the Denmark line infantry. That's just amazing. And for some reason, I think he pulls away these guys. I'm not quite sure what that was about. Denmark's just moving up more of its men, and then my men finally arrive to help join the battle. Because I told them, you know, we gotta work together. We gotta get that triple alliance going. And then we just have this epic line battle. Going back and forth. Light infantry cannot stand up to line infantry. And finally, he opens up his men and he's like, alright, we're fighting. A bit too late. It's a bit too late. And so we're kind of forming up our lines, moving up, because as you cut down the light infantry, you got to move on to the line infantry. And then you'll notice Prussia has got these lights in the back that are just going to be able to do what they want. Because he's not turning anyone around. Which, again, we didn't really mind if this was the brunt of the attack. Because we start routing everyone over here. And they're just like these Highland foot, which actually we're doing pretty strong.
Victories are soon to be yours.
But then soon we were able to go ahead and get everyone into a good position. And I decided, as I was lining up, that because not only were these both completely untouched, these guys hadn't done anything. And I was like, oh, well, I don't want you guys to be lazy, so... before, because we're going to start firing, but I don't want to fire, right into the backs of my allies. That'd be pretty horrible. So I decided, well, there's not much else to do. May as well charge. In a second, there's a nice charge. And Denmark being very bold with their line infantry. Just kind of firing at them. This was a pretty interesting setup, but then I decided to make the charge. And this will actually inspire Denmark to do the same. And you just get this full swarm of men coming down to crash onto these other British soldiers. And that's when it all goes nuts. We clash, and I do a nice sweeping thing with my mouse, and the lines are just crashing like a wave onto the British. And everything's in red. I'm so sorry. We were all using red uniforms, but that's just kind of something that happens. At least the Prussians were using a different colored uniform, so that made it a bit easier. And then we end up routing pretty much everyone because of that one charge. All right. Again, my side just deployed more men, and I think that honestly really kind of helps out the balance. I had the most deployed men out of any of my units. Probably because also I'm using what were they called? The lights. The lights that I'm using are not the fancy ones, so they have more men in their unit, which is probably why. Now I only lost, I got the least amount of kills, but I was able to wipe out a whole player, so I thought that was pretty good. Anyway, so as the Prussians, we had Deza as Denmark. We had Fape, me of course, as the British. Matt Clapp again, playing as the British player. Max, who was the Russian player. And then Nick de Ververar was the French. I hope you all enjoyed this Total War battle. I'm Elwirfy, and I'll see you guys next time.